Much like most kids, Pokemon was a huge part of my childhood. One of my earliest memories is of the advert for Pokemon Leaf Green and Fire Red. I was about 5 years old at the time and my imagination went crazy. It got to the point that my family were probably praying that whenever we were watching TV and it went to ads, they didn't show that advert, because they made a point of asking for it every single time it came on. I think my imagination took over my memories a little bit, because I remember it taking place on a bridge with a massive battle between Venusaur and Charizard. Watching the ad back now, it's not quite how I imagined it. In my head, I had this idea of me having a Venusaur and my brother having a Charizard, just as pets, being able to do all kinds of cool stuff with them. It got to the point that my brother had to check with me and make sure that I knew it was a game, and I wasn't hoping to wake up Christmas morning to a real life Venusaur downstairs. Christmas morning came around and unfortunately, there was no real Venusaur to be seen. However, one of my presents was a Game Boy Advance and a copy of Leaf Green to go with it. I still own these to this day, and get them out every now and then for old time's sake. That one Christmas present started my love for Pokemon and probably games in general. I played the games, collected the cards, I tried to watch every episode of the show whenever it was on. Even going to the length of sneaking my Game Boy into bed so I could play under the covers until I was too tired to continue. My imagination as a child ran wild when it came to video games, and Pokemon was at the forefront of that. So safe to say, just 3 weeks ago when I woke up to see half of the people I follow on Twitch playing this game, I was curious. I'd heard nothing of it until that very moment. I was wondering what this game was and why everyone was playing it. I asked a couple of people and they all had the same response. Well, it's Pokemon with guns. I think at this point we have all heard or said that statement at least 3 times a day. The term Pokemon with guns sounds tacky and a little cheap, but it did intrigue me. After just 5 minutes, I knew I had to try this game. It reminded me of that time as a child, watching the advert and just being amazed. The game had only been out a day, but I had seen enough to sell me. In my head, this was the game 5-year-old me wanted to play. I didn't even know it was what I wanted until I saw it. Somehow, this company knew the game little me had always wanted to play. I was a little bit apprehensive because survival/base building games have never really been my cup of tea. I know games like Rust and Ark are insanely popular, but they never appealed to me. I know it's unfair to criticise something I never played. I think I just always struggled to understand the gameplay loop of those games. This apprehension quickly disappeared when I loaded into the world for the first time and got started. It sucked me in right away. Let's be honest, you all know the basics of the game and how it works, but I'll give a quick rundown anyway. You spawn in with nothing and are thrust into this world. Your goal is to progress and level up to increase your base and player level so you can craft a wider variety of tools, weapons and spheres to catch stronger and stronger pals. In the opening area you see your basic pals, nothing super fancy. My first pal was a Cativar. I walked up to the little pink guy and hit him over the head with an axe a few times before throwing my first sphere. It felt so satisfying to capture this thing. This feeling doesn't go away later on. I find myself still catching pals after I've completed their power deck entry and caught 10 of them. The sounds of the ball just sound right. The thuds when it fails, the jingles when you succeed. It's all there to feed your brain the dopamine it is craving. Eventually you start work on your base. I enjoyed this part of the game a lot more than I expected to. You start off with just the one base and you can assign pals to work there. Every pal has different capabilities, so the idea is to build up a nice range of pals in order to create a functioning base. To start with, you're going to want to focus on resource generation and farming. This way you can create a base that sustains itself off the food it grows. The actual base build in this game can be a little bit janky at times, but it works for the most part. If it was completely dysfunctional then that would put me off. It works aside from a few minor inconveniences. I found myself having to be in some odd positions in order to place some things. Most of the structures I have built have been incredibly basic because of this. It wasn't something I was super bothered by because I was more focused on other areas of my base and making an elaborate design for my house. For example, you have a technology tree, and as you level up you gain access to newer and cooler stuff for your base. Having the quick scroll down makes you excited to level up and enhance your base. Going from regular workbenches to big electric power supply lines is incredibly satisfying. As far as the world goes, the map is huge. With a variety of areas and different pals filling these areas, you are going to be discovering new places and pals for a long time. I have 2 playthroughs on the go and both are around level 30. Much of the map I haven't touched yet. I've seen most of the pals in the power deck, but there are still some I haven't seen. Early on in the game you find a lot more fast travel points, and as you get further into exploring you start to notice they are more spread out. This is probably done to account for the mounts you're eventually able to craft. In the mid game, most of your exploring is done on the back of your pals. This is also satisfying. The flying works well and you are able to travel relatively quickly from point to point. I have found myself in trouble before, accidentally stumbling into an area of enemies at a much higher level than me, while frantically trying to find a fast travel point. But I suppose it wouldn't really be a survival game without this threat. As far as the combat goes, it is incredibly entertaining. In the early game, using the bat to club pals so they become more catchable is fun. The sound effects have a kick to them that are just satisfying. I realise that sentence makes me sound like a psychopath, but it's just a video game. Who cares? The gunplay seems standard, but that's okay. It's just as entertaining to shoot a pal or enemy than it is to attack them with a bat. There is a nice selection of guns available as well, providing different options depending on your playstyle. As far as power versus power action goes, you essentially have 3 modes you can set your pals to. You can opt for them to not attack at all no matter what. You can have them focus the same enemy you are. Or you can have them be super aggressive and just go nuts. I do hope to see more options added when it comes to using the pals in battle. I'm not sure how they would do it, but sometimes it does feel a little limiting, and like I don't have much control over them. There is the ability to ride certain pals. When doing this, you get the chance to control them in combat and select the moves they use. While this is fun, I often found it to be not worth doing because it limits your damage output to just the pal. Now, some pals do have abilities that alter their use in combat, like a hedgehog you can throw as a grenade, or a panda that gains access to fast-firing grenade launchers attached to its shoulders. It is truly a sight to behold. Witnessing your game essentially slowed to a crawl because your friend fired the launcher in an area densely populated by trees and the server just couldn't keep up. All these factors come together to make Palworld a truly unique experience, to me at least. Yes, it has parts from a wide variety of games, but it's how it utilises them that in my opinion makes it stand out and sets it apart from the rest. I give my thoughts and experiences with this game to try and give some context for the video. I imagine my story and introduction to the game is similar to many people who have played the game. Question is, why? What about this game has managed to captivate pretty much the entire internet since its release? Whether it be positive or negative, people are talking about it. How did this game seemingly come out of nowhere and manage to become only a second ever game to break 2 million concurrent players on Steam? Beating out games like Baldur's Gate 3, Hogwarts Legacy, Elden Ring, and even Counter-Strike 2. The developers said themselves they didn't have a creative vision. They just wanted to give people a game that they would enjoy. They did exactly that. It felt like an event, people sharing tips and tricks they found, showing off the cool pals they caught and how they can utilize them. It felt like we were kids again on the playground, talking about Pokemon and sharing our teams with each other, finding cool tricks or funny interactions we found. I was glad I was streaming when I realised you could load a penguin into a rocket launcher and use it as a weapon. Or that I could have a chipmunk-like creature sit atop my head and fire a submachine gun. That's the type of thing that is just fun to share with others. I do think this game is best played with other people. It functions perfectly well as a single player experience, but it is a great game to play with the right people. One of my favourite experiences with the game involved us setting up a base in a new higher level area to try and gather resources. We left to explore a little and came back to all our pals unconscious. Turns out, a nearby overworld boss wasn't happy we moved in, so he decided to wander into our base and just kill everything. We all came together and used what pals we had to fight the boss. It overleveled us by a fair bit, but all of us together were able to take him down. You wouldn't get that type of experience playing single player. The battles just have a greater sense of scale when playing with a few people. We developed a method of distracting the boss with balls at an incredibly low catch rate, just to give the others a chance to revive those who had got downed. Eventually we did manage to get him low enough to actually catch him with just a 2% catch rate. To me, it's moments like these that make this game special. Pocket Pair saw a gap in the market and filled it. I don't see this as a bad thing. Not every game has to be groundbreaking and revolutionise the medium. Some games can just be fun. Obviously, the opposite is also true. A lack of creativity and innovation will eventually lead to stagnation. However, I don't think Palworld has a lack of creativity. I think it is unfair to claim they just copied Pokemon. It took parts of different games and meshed them together, yes, but we all take inspiration from things. The game has its flaws and bugs. For example, I am not overly keen on the raid feature. I found them to be more of a nuisance than anything, with oftentimes the raiders getting stuck on something and not actually making it to the base. We don't know what they have in store and what's to come. In my eyes, what they have given us so far is incredibly fun even with its imperfections. Early access games tend to have a charm to them. You're aware they are a work in progress, so you're a bit more forgiving when it comes to things. There is nothing super game-breaking gameplay wise. The worst thing I have encountered is that servers will crash fairly often when playing on them. This is irritating, but it doesn't stop me from enjoying the game for what it is. I'm sure Pocket Pair didn't account for this level of success. Even if they were confident in the game, I highly doubt they expected this. As of January 31st, the game has sold 12 million copies on Steam. There would have been more to come anyway, but given its success, I am sure they want to capitalise on this further. Some of the things I would like to see included are more pals. This one is obvious and a natural progression. In a game where capturing creatures is a massive part of the gameplay, then having more can't hurt. The dungeons are fun and I hope to see them expanded on. The ones I have done have all had the same layouts. Adding in some different layouts to mix things up would be nice to avoid them feeling too samey. And obviously, fixing bugs and server crashes are much needed, and hopefully we see that soon. At the end of the day, they made a game and it resonated with people. The comparisons of Pokemon are there, and it's not like this game is going to stop people playing Pokemon. Pokemon Scarlet and Violet sold 24 million copies. Pokemon fans are seemingly loyal despite the issues many have with the newer games. But that doesn't change the fact that lots of Pokemon fans have grown up now, and many are unhappy with the direction of the games. There's a frustration amongst Pokemon fans that the games largely have been the same. I feel like many people had this idea of what Pokemon could be back when playing on the Game Boy. Pokemon's Legends Arceus felt like a step in the right direction, but to many it felt a little underwhelming. I think that part of Palworld's success comes from this idea people had in their minds for a modern Pokemon game. I'm sure many people have a similar story to me, being a child and experiencing these games, having a deep love for them, using the games to create a world in our minds. Obviously, Palworld takes a more mature approach. I don't expect you to be able to butcher a Pikachu in an upcoming Pokemon game. I'm still a fan of the Pokemon games. Competition isn't a bad thing. If Palworld pushes Game Freak to experiment with the Pokemon brand a little more, then I don't think that can be seen as a negative at all. They have all the parts, they have the Pokemon, they have the built-in fan base. Obviously it would be a more family-friendly take, but I also don't think that is necessarily a bad thing. We all just want to play fun games. Combining the Pokemon-like creatures with the already widely popular survival game genre, you clearly have a recipe for success. If 5-year-old me could have played Palworld, I would have been blown away. Maybe a little more traumatized, but that's besides the point. If you're someone who hasn't tried Palworld yet, I recommend checking it out. Let me know if you have played Palworld and who your favourite Pow is so far. I played this game over on my Twitch, so come check me out over there if you want to watch me play some of the games I talk about live. Subscribing and leaving a like helps me out massively, so that would be greatly appreciated. But for now, peace out.